We had just finished cleaning up after dinner when she made my heart skip a beat. "Darling, bring us a couple of drinks and meet us in the living room. There's something we need to talk about." This longer, wordier version of "we need to talk" didn't make me look forward to the conversation, but I obediently did as asked. Mary and I had been together for almost 2 years, and were getting married next Saturday, exactly 1 week from today. We were already living together and having impressively great sex about 2 months after we started dating. I had no doubts about our relationship or marrying her and wondered what it might be about. We sat together on the sofa and each of us took a sip of our drinks. I could tell she was having some trouble starting a conversation, so I decided to try to help her a little. "Mary, are you leaving me?" She turned to me with a look of horror on her face. "God, no, Henry. I love you and plan to be with you for the rest of my life, and I can't wait to marry you. Nothing like this. What then, baby? You know you don't have to worry about talking to me about anything." "I know, my love. It's just, well, it's a conversation I've known about for years, but it's still hard to start." I took her hand and kissed the back of it. "Whatever it is, we'll get through it together, okay?" Mary turned and smiled at me, then apparently just decided she had no choice but to say it. "Henry, baby, you know how close my family is and how much they love you." I knew. My family, of course, loved each other, but Mary's family, if such a thing could be appreciated, would be much higher. "Sure, baby. And you know how much I love them." "I know. I've already told you how important this is to me, and your relationship with them has exceeded even what I hoped for. But with only a week left until our wedding, there is one last thing that needs to be done. I guess you could say it's a family tradition. This is what my family has done for generations to bring the family together whenever marriage occurs. We feel like this makes the new family member, well, a closer part of the family." "Well, that doesn't sound so bad. What should I do?" "You know, of course, that we talked about how I would stay with my parents starting tonight, and you wouldn't see me until I walked down the aisle with Dad on my wedding day. Well, you will spend the Friday evening before the wedding with my mother. I really liked Mary's mother, and as they say, if you want to know what a woman will look like when she's older, look at her mother. Well, let's just say I was happy with the expected result." "Oh, that's interesting. So, your mom and I go to dinner and spend time talking and really getting to know each other. Something like that?" "Well, I'm sure dinner and conversation will be part of it, but that's not really the tradition I was talking about. You and your mother, well, get to know each other very well." "Mary, please, can you just say what you mean?" She took a deep breath to calm herself, and then looked me straight in the eyes. "Henry, you're going to spend Friday night having sex with my mother." Of all the things I could think of, this wasn't even on the list, and I think the evidence was pretty obvious from the look on my face. You're not serious?" "I'm completely serious, my love. As I said, my family believes that the closeness between a future husband and the opposite parent creates an unbreakable bond and truly brings that person into the family. As I already said, this continues in our family from generation to generation." "Are you saying that your father... Did you have sex with Grandma Agnes?" Like a champ from what Grandma says about it, and yes, Grandpa Frank slept with Great-Grandma Alice. And so, on, through generations of people you've never even heard of, let alone met. You've already mentioned how well Dad and Grandma get along. Well, now you know why. And husbands, too. I mean, your father, he's like, is everything okay with him?" "Look, baby, you don't have to decide right now," she said, avoiding my question. "The time I spend with my parents this week will give you time to think about it. Just remember how important this is. You can say no if you want, but that means we won't be able to get married and we'll have to break up." I really started to go crazy. An hour ago, I was blissfully waiting for my wedding day to approach so that I could unite myself with the best woman I have ever known, with whom I would like to spend my life. And now suddenly I was told that if I did not agree to what, on first impression, I considered morally unacceptable, then not only would my wedding be canceled, but I would lose this woman completely. Suddenly, my lunch was unhappy with its current placement. I jumped off the couch without saying a word and just ran to the toilet. Luckily, the apartment wasn't very big, before his presence made itself known. I stayed there until there was nothing left but air, and my abdominal muscles rebelled. Mary was right behind me when I finally felt confident enough to turn away from the porcelain god and finish my prayer, sitting on the floor right next to him just in case. "Are you okay, baby?" I looked at her as if she had suddenly grown green heads on both sides of her neck. "No, Mary, I'm not okay. I was just told that I must do something that I find morally questionable at best, or I will lose the love of my life forever. Isn't there some leeway in your tradition, some position for a man who loves you with all his heart and soul, but doesn't feel comfortable with what you ask?" "No, dear, I'm sorry. Mom was actually engaged to someone before she met Dad, and he didn't want to do it. He said he didn't think it was right. She left him that day and never spoke to him again." "But you can break the vicious circle, Mary. We can just fly to Vegas and get married there." Suddenly, judging by Mary's look, these green alien heads just grew out of my neck. "Henry, you surprised me. I would never show disrespect to my parents, in fact to my entire family, by doing something like that. And if you think I would do that, you don't know me at all." I, of course, knew this, and if I had not been in such emotional turmoil, I would not have even suggested it. Mary would never go against what her family considered so important. I tried to apologize. "Everything is okay, dear. I know it was a real shock. That's why I told you. Now that you have a week to think about what you want to do." Suddenly, a thought occurred to me. "Oh my God, Mary. If I somehow agree to this and then we have a daughter, then you—" I trailed off. "Will I definitely have sex with our future son-in-law?" "Yes, Henry, that's part of it too. But if we have a son, then all responsibility will fall on you." The thought flashed through my head that the continuous succession of daughters born into this family would not allow this to happen. "Mary, this is too much. I don't think I can do this." She climbed onto my lap as I sat on the bathroom floor. She wrapped her arms around my neck and pressed her head against mine. "Henry, my love, you are the strongest man I know here," she said, patting my chest. "I would trust you with my life, because I know that you have the strength to do what needs to be done, for me and for us. I love you with everything I have, but it has to be a decision you make. I'm getting ready to pack for the week, and I have every confidence that you and I will stand together at the altar on Saturday and get married, and all that implies." "Mary, I couldn't think of anything to say when she stood up, so I remained on the bathroom floor while Mary packed her things. I was completely numb and lost track of time, but at least I didn't throw up again. She knelt in front of me and took my hands in hers. She looked at me with sincere love. I knew that she loved me, and that the thought of this coming between us also hurt her. But I knew her well enough to know that she would not fall for it. "When you make a decision, just call to my parents' house. This will be the last time I see you before our wedding. You either need to invite my mom to Friday night or ask for your rings back. I know you will make the right choice. Do you want me to help you get up, baby?" "No, I think I'll just sit here for a while just in case." She kissed my forehead and left the apartment. I really wondered if I would ever see her again. That night, I slept on the couch, for some reason not wanting to be in bed without Mary. It was like if I didn't sleep there alone, then I could pretend that Mary was there and that this whole nightmare just didn't happen. Of course, it didn't work. The next morning, I woke up just as lonely as I had been the night before, and emotionally, probably even lonelier. The thought of breakfast almost made me want to vomit again, so I just went for a walk. The fresh air seemed to help. I thought again about the scenario I was facing. The only thing I could think about was how wrong it all seemed, but I had nowhere to turn for another perspective. My very conservative parents would have been furious at the very idea and would probably have demanded that I cut off all contact with Mary and her family so that I couldn't discuss it with them and the rest of my extended family would be no better. At some point, I realized that there was really only one person, someone who had been through this themselves, who could perhaps give me some perspective on this, and I would feel embarrassed to bring this up in conversation as we will be talking about how I will have sex with his wife. But I didn't see any other choice, because if I couldn't somehow wrap my head around it, I would have demanded my rings back, and I really didn't want that yet. I returned to the apartment and dialed the number. "Henry, my boy, I was wondering how long it would take you to call after that little bomb my daughter dropped on you yesterday. I believe you need to talk." "Yes, sir. Will you be free at some point today? Let's meet at Clancy's Pub around 6:30. We'll drink beer, eat, and discuss everything." "Thank you, sir." The day seemed to creep on, but it was finally approaching 6:30. I arrived 5 minutes early to find Mary's father already waiting in the back booth, which would give us some privacy. I walked over and sat down. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with me, sir." "Henry, we've known each other for a couple of years. I think you can drop the sir part. It's Joe, or even Dad if you want, but not sir. And I was waiting for your call, although it took you longer than I expected." I was quite taken aback by what Mary said. "Joe, I'm so sorry, but calling you Dad right now seems a little premature. So you're going to break up with Mary? I consider almost everything, including registering in a local monastery and dedicating my life to God. From what my daughter said, it would be a damn shame to exclude you from the male population, if you know what I mean. So I hope you rule out that option." I shook my head at the thought of Mary sharing information about our sex life with her parents, or more specifically, her father. He noticed. "I'm very sorry, Henry, but we talk quite openly about such things. It's not such a big deal if everyone acts openly. So what can I tell you, my boy? I guess my first question is, how do you feel about this? Henry, I would be lying if I told you that the thought of a virile young man fucking my wife is something that makes me happy. I imagine I'll spend the night heavily under the influence of something and then sleep it off at a nearby hotel. But I knew what I was getting into when I agreed to this and had sex with Agnes 24 years ago, and I will contribute to the family. Did you ever, think about this when your wife was pregnant? And you hoped it would be a boy? Hell yes. And not because I imagined what beauty my son might bring home. How did you decide to go through this? I mean, I've always been taught that being in a committed relationship, even if you're not actually married, means that that person is the only one you're intimate with. I understand that in this case everyone knows what is going on and has given their approval, but I am still conflicted with what I was taught. And only you can decide how you are going to apply these things in your life, Henry. For better or worse, we are all raised the way our parents see fit. But once we reach adulthood, we must evaluate these life lessons and decide whether we agree with them. I understand your point of view. Just because I was raised that way doesn't mean I have to believe it. That's it. You're an adult now, Henry, and you have to decide what's right for you personally. This is part of free will, but the fact is that in your mind what is being proposed is wrong, and it will be difficult to overcome. Let's pretend for a moment that you have no moral objection to being intimate with a woman other than Mary. What else about this situation bothers you? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, sir, Joe. I paused and took a deep breath. My first thought is how I would look you in the face. Like, would it be awkward? Considering I had sex with your wife, and you know it. A wide smile appeared on Joe's face, and a puzzled expression appeared on mine. You know, Henry, that was the first thing that came to my mind. How the hell am I going to stand at the altar and look into the face of Frank, whose wife I would have just spent the night with when he led National to the altar, let alone for the rest of your life? So I called him, just like you called me. I told you I was waiting for your call. He did just that. The more things change, the more they stay the same, as they say. I think this scenario plays out almost every time. What kind of man finds out that he has to have sex with his future mom with full knowledge of the family? Will there be no problem with this? Calling the man whose wife you would be with was a natural reaction. So you had a meeting with Mary's grandfather like we have now? Certainly. and he told me the same thing that I'm going to tell you right now, Henry, and you should hear it. I placed my glass on the table and turned my full attention to him. He continued, I understand that this tradition, as they call it, is unorthodox. But the women in this family are singularly and fiercely loyal to their men, Henry. I guarantee that you will never have any reason to believe that Mary would cheat on you or even put herself in a position where it would seem that way. She would rather die than embarrass you or make you doubt her love and loyalty. With the obvious exception of your future son-in-law, of course. I believe in it. This is one of the things that made me fall in love with Mary in the first place. Your marriage will be the kind that all men strive for. I know I'm talking about my daughter's son, but for the rest of your life, she'll be a perfect lady in public, but a notorious slut in the bedroom. I felt myself blush when he spoke of his own daughter that way, and the smile that appeared on his lips told me that he had noticed. He continued, She won't deny you anything in the bedroom. Do you think the last couple of years have been good? You haven't seen anything yet. But no other man would even look at her, let alone reach out to her. Knowing what I know now, even considering what's about to happen on Friday night, I can tell you with absolute certainty that it was worth it, and I promise you that Frank would tell you the same thing. I love Millie more every day and would do anything for her. I would have dropped dead this second if that was what she wanted. That's how much she means to me. And Friday night, if you make what I think is the right decision and move forward to marry Mary with Millie in your bed, don't hold back. Enjoy it and help Millie enjoy it. It was all so much to take in. It seemed unthinkable to talk to a man so casually about me getting his wife into bed. So you and Grandma Agnes? I couldn't put into words what I wanted to say, but he seemed to know what I was asking. It was just incredible, Henry. Of course, times have changed a lot. You and Mary have much more experience than Millie and I had when we were a week away from our wedding. Agnes was not only a pleasure to be with, but she taught me a lot about how to please a woman, and Millie often thanked her mother for this. But everyone knows about it. Isn't that weird? In fact, it's just the opposite, Henry. Since everyone knows about it, there is no secret to keep. It's just something that happens and everyone accepts it as normal. So no one even talks about it? I wouldn't say that. It's just not a big deal. You'll probably be asked how it went, if you guys got close and stuff like that. It may come up in casual conversation over the years, just like any other event in your life. But it's not like people are going to come up to you and say, Dude, I can't believe you fucked Millie. Was she hot? What about you and Agnes? Did anything strange happen to you after that? I'm also worried about my relationship with Millie. Not at all. It actually gave us something very intimate and personal to share. It tied us together and, as a result, connected me to the family as a whole. I know this is unusual, but these are the results. We finished our drinks, and I thanked Joe for his time. He easily dismissed my concerns about what my relationship with Mary's family would be like if I went through with this. It seemed to be just part of being a family and treated no differently than if Millie and I had spent the evening bowling together. This seemed very strange to me, so the only problem I had was that agreeing to this meant doing it with the knowledge that one day Mary would have sex with another man, assuming that we would have a daughter, of course. For reference, I have known 5 generations of Mary's family, and during that time, exactly 0 sons were born. No one. This seems strange, since it is supposedly the male contribution to the fertilization process that determines the sex of the child. With all these sons-in-law joining the family, you would think that some men would be born, but none were born. And I had no illusions of changing this invincible trait. Therefore, in my opinion, I would enter into a marriage that I knew in advance would contain an act of adultery, at least according to its strictest definition. But Joe was adamant that his marriage to Millie was worth it, even with what was to come. If this situation were presented to me as an outsider, I would tell the guy, run. You already know she's going to cheat on you. But not only did I not run away, I was almost sure that I would do it. The week crawled along as usual. I was practically useless at work unless someone literally grabbed me and got my attention. Everyone knew I was getting married on Saturday, so it was chalked up to nerves and everyone was very supportive. I was grateful for this as it allowed me to focus on the real reason for my distraction. I'm usually very confident, but I found myself unable to press a number on my phone, and by this time, it was already Thursday afternoon. A decision must be made, and made soon. I still had problems with the idea of Mary having sex with another man, even 20+ years in the future. Several times I decided to go for it, only to have this image flash in my head, and I hesitated again. After speaking with Joe, I have not heard anything from Mary or her family. True to their word, they left me alone to make this decision, which was probably the most important decision I have ever made. They didn't put any pressure on me one way or the other, which is what I really expected. This was explained to me so that I could understand, and then everything depended on me. I wondered what Mary was going through. Had I somehow damaged our relationship by taking so long to make a decision? Will Mary really think that I don't love her as much as I did because I didn't agree to it more readily? I certainly hoped that wasn't the case, that she would understand the internal struggle I was experiencing. This remains to be seen. On the way home, I stopped, picked up some takeout, and decided to make a decision and make a phone call. I turned it all over in my head, but in the end, it all came down to one question. Was I better off with Mary or without her, given what was going to happen in 20 years? After that, the decision was easy to make, and I made it. I dialed Joe and Millie's home number. Mary answered, obviously seeing the caller's number because she knew it was me. "Hi, darling. We were waiting for your call." Her voice wasn't as confident as usual, so she was clearly worried about the decision I had made. "Hello, Mary." I paused for just a moment for added effect. "Can I talk to your mother, please?" The smile on her face was clear even over the phone. "Of course you can, baby." Millie knocked on the door at exactly 6:30 p.m. It was decided that she would come to my house, and the evening would begin from there. I felt it would be awkward enough if I had to pick her up where Joe and Mary were, let alone pick her up in the morning. "Hello, I'm nervous. Henry? Ma'am? Since we're going to have sex, let's call each other by our first names, okay?" "Yes, well, Millie. Can I come in now?" "Certainly." I backed away from the door, feeling pretty stupid. I haven't been this nervous since. Well, never before. Suddenly, I was even worried about my ability to perform when the time came. "Henry, I know this is a little strange, but I'm a woman like everyone else. Millie, I appreciate your desire to reassure me, but I promise that you are not just a woman like any other, at least to me. But I'll try to think of you that way. Do you think drinking will calm you down?" I probably shouldn't have been more nervous than I am now. We both laughed, and it seemed to relieve the tension. I took Millie's bag, carried it into the bedroom, and put it on Mary's dressing table, and then we went to dinner. We ate at a small Mexican restaurant, taking a booth in the corner to talk. "Henry, let's talk about what happens later." "By later, you mean when we have sex?" "Yes." "Fine." I was a little taken aback by how openly she and the whole family talked about it. I grew up in a family where talking about it was like doing it on the living room floor in front of the parish priest. It just wasn't done. And, to be honest, I liked this new method much better. You never had to worry about saying the wrong thing. "Henry, when we get into bed, I want to make it clear exactly what I expect, and you should do the same. I don't want there to be any confusion." "Okay, Millie. I think I'll feel more comfortable if you start." "Of course. The important thing is that I don't want you to hold back in any way. I don't want you to feel like you have to stop and think, is this what I should do with Mommy Mary? If you want to do something to me, just do it. For example, yes, Henry, whatever. I am a woman who loves sex of all kinds. I plan to please your manhood and expect you to soften, caressing me in my private place. Several times. Mary told me, you're good at it, so I hope to be impressed. This was never Joe's special skill. And of course, what always seems to be the main thing, I absolutely expect you to take me to the place where I sit. I love it. In fact, I was the one who convinced Mary to try it with you, and you know how much she likes it. In short, I'm open to absolutely anything, so just do it. I was stunned by the speech she had just given me, and the smile on her face told me that this was exactly what she wanted. I do not know what to say. Sex should be fun, Henry, and I want us to have fun. So, is there anything you want to do that you think I might object to, or something that you're uncomfortable with me doing to you? No, Millie. After what you just said, I'm not sure there's anything more. She smiled. Millie, can I ask how you personally feel about all this? Or maybe a better question would be how you felt about this when you were a bride-to-be. Girls in the family are raised from an early age, knowing what will happen. I was actually very excited about the idea, as was Mary. I don't know if she told you about this. Not really. She made it clear that it was necessary and that she had no problem with it, but she didn't say anything about being excited about it. Well, it is. She would have watched it if she could and even asked if we could record it. I told her it was something private between you and me and not for her eyes. And you didn't have any problems with the fact that it affected your marriage with Joe, with his close relationship with your mother? I didn't have any concerns. It brought us all closer. It's just 1 or 2 nights into a long and happy marriage, and it was with the woman I love more than anything in the world. I was happy to share it with her, and vice versa. I had not considered this point of view, that Mary had not only chosen to share me with her mother, but to share her mother, the woman who raised her and was closer to her than any other person in the world, with me. It was actually something of an honor for me, although I didn't realize it until now. Wait a minute. Did you just say 1 or 2 nights? I thought it was a one-time deal. The family takes advantage of these occasions to renew, let's say, some of these moments. While I'm spending the night in your bed, where do you think Joe will be? He told me that he would get drunk and sleep it off at the hotel because it would be difficult for him to think about you and me together. No, dear. Joe is now in the company of my mother. Is he with Agnes? Maybe. It's completely up to them. But Agnes is already over 60. So what? My parents are still very sexually active. Mom may not be there anymore and gets excited on her own, but they have things to help with that. She still really loves sex. I wouldn't be at all surprised if they become close. I just looked down and shook my head as this new information filtered into my brain, so I might have to endure it again like Mary does? Damn it. As if reading my thoughts, Millie continued. Yes, this means that Mary can indeed do it twice, but don't forget that this will mean that you get me twice. Henry, I know this is all quite difficult to accept, but we have been doing this for generations. We never had a divorce, and neither man, as far as I know, ever expressed regret about his choice. What about tomorrow morning? I mean, you'll leave me after you sleep with me and meet your husband, who in all likelihood just slept with your mother. Wouldn't that be awkward? Only if we let it happen, but the fact is that what we do brings us all so close that it seems completely natural, and we have what I guess you would call a ritual that helps with that. A ritual? When I leave your apartment tomorrow morning, Henry, I expect us to have amazing sex. But before I go, I will climb into your shower and wash myself thoroughly. I have everything I need in my bag. I will wear clothes chosen specifically for this purpose, which are also in my bag. I will then return to my home and introduce myself to my husband for his pleasure. He will aggressively and persistently do whatever he deems necessary to make me his woman again. And then we will go and give our beautiful daughter to the man of her dreams. And then our lives will continue, as they have for the past 24 years, as a devoted couple loving each other very much. Nothing has ever threatened this, and nothing will ever threaten it. As all of this sunk into my psyche, one thought kept crossing my mind. I didn't want to live without Mary, but if that was the price, could I live with it? At that moment, I decided what I would do. I raised my head and met Millie's gaze. Millie, I think the time for talking is over. It's time for me to take you back to my apartment and have the thorough sex you've come to expect. Now you've spoken like a man, dear. I took care of the check, and we returned to my home. The anticipation filled me all the way home, and I was looking forward to it. We decided to take a shower beforehand, probably just the first of several showers we would take, and I admired her body as she undressed, noting with interest her shaved privates. "Are you enjoying the view, Henry?" "Very much, Millie. Really, really, you are an incredibly beautiful woman. Mary told me that you prefer things to be smooth, so I did this just for you. Joe's preferences lie in the other direction." I smiled at her as she placed her hands on her hips and presented her naked body to me. Hell, she looked good for a woman of any age, but especially for a 44-year-old woman. "Millie, let's make a deal." She looked at me with interest. "I love Mary very much, and I know how much you love Joe. I will do my best to put my inhibitions aside and make love to you the way you want and deserve, but let's do this one last time we mention their names until tomorrow. Deal?" She laughed and said, "Agreed." The details of that night will forever be known only to Millie and me. I had a little experience before I met Mary, but this was the first time I had been with a mature woman, and it was definitely different. Millie doesn't have the same energy or flexibility as Mary, but she has some talents that need to be experienced at least once in a lifetime. We slept a little, but not very much. I decided that if I was going to do this, I was going to give it everything I had, and I hope Millie wasn't lying when she told me how wonderful it was. I certainly thought so, although it was not the love that Mary and I feel for each other. We did everything Millie talked about and a few things she didn't talk about. We christened every room in our small apartment, and I think we were both a little disappointed when it came time for her to get ready to go back to her husband. It was just wonderful, Henry. I haven't had an experience like this in years, and I will always cherish the time we spent together that night. I will remember this fondly and forever. My daughter is a happy woman. And your husband, Millie, is very lucky. I will also remember this night forever. I had my doubts about this tradition of yours, but I can't deny that it's great. All these generations cannot be wrong. I'll leave now and see you at the wedding. My Taha ate up the miles on its way east. Noon was approaching, and I finally turned on the phone, which had been turned off since the morning. God, 38 calls and 54 messages from Mary, a lot of the same from Millie and my never-to-be cuckolded father-in-law, Joe. I knew, of course, that my parents were not in church. Yes, and I had no need to call them. I told them in the morning about my plans, and they warmly supported me. Dad said, "Let this bitch and her whole fucking family burn in hell." Apparently, Mary received the message that my phone was online because her phone rang at that very moment. "Darling, where are you?" "Priest, all my family is here, and my father is ready to walk me down the aisle, but you are not at the altar." "Mary, do you really think that I want to marry some bitch who I know will cheat on me in the future? Considering all the disrespect you have shown towards me, I will only tell you once, I don't want to see or hear from you anymore." "Henry, why did you react this way? This is a family tradition, and neither I nor my mother could do otherwise," she said chokedly through sobs. "Are there any other traditions in your family that you haven't yet had time to tell me about? Maybe I will need to fuck your grandmother after the birth of my first daughter. She should help you raise your great-granddaughter. Now, I'm not a member of your fucking family, and your traditions don't concern me. And honey, your mother was so incredible that I just can't take it away. Her the opportunity to have sex again with a young guy, your next future husband. You won't deny her this opportunity, will you?" I turned off the phone and increased the speed. I had my whole life ahead of me, and I hope I meet that one woman who won't look forward to having sex in every possible way with my future son-in-law, cuckolding me, maybe twice. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.